Hello everyone. I'm not sure Hello everyone. Welcome to another Hub Talk from Architect Hub Qatar. Today we are happy to have with us a panel discussion on the topic of a holistic framework for a system approach to education and practice. Our panel will be Dr. Raffaello Furlan, Head of the Department of Architecture and Urban Planning at the University of Qatar. Also, we have with us architects Sarah Al-Sada and Hiba Al-Gahani. They are both graduates of the Department of Architecture and Urban Planning. Moderating for us will be Dr. Muhammad Said Ahmed, PhD from the University of Toronto and currently professor at Humber College, and previously educational counselor at the American Cultural Center and the Hub's education consultant. He's joining us all the way from Toronto. Happy to have you with us, Dr. Muhammad, and now you can take over.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. This is quite an exciting topic. To introduce the topic, I will stick to the topic as described. So the architectural education is an increasingly complex endeavor with the development of knowledge and building of skills aimed at global and local conditions in a state of constant flux. With architecture holding professional status in many international jurisdictions, there is tremendous pressure to ensure that graduates are duly equipped with robust capabilities to solve daunting problems. Added to the mix are escalating challenges such as climate change, eroding resources, heightened urbanization, and a call for demonstrable sustainability. Today, our societies, our institutions, and our daily lives confront particular challenges through endemic fragmentation. Knowledge is passed up into disciplines, information is grouped based on categorization, data is replete and omnipresent. Increasingly, we are flooded with an overall of bits and bytes, and books and files and rules and regulations we translate into difficult navigation and hard sledding. As we endeavor to prepare students for careers as professional architects, a key aspect of teaching and learning is concerned with managing complexity. Countering the trends to separation and isolation are calls for greater holism and integration. One of the challenges is to develop a holistic framework for design and planning, as well as innovatively and aggressively calling for a systems approach, systems thinking being the new approach to education and practice. Our esteemed guests today include Professor Raffaello Furlan, who's the head of architecture and urban planning at Qatar University, along with two young architects and alumni, Ms. Sarah Al-Sada and Ms. Hiba Al-Jahani, or Al-Muhandisa Sarah and Al-Muhandisa Hiba. Professor Furlan, in addition to being head of department now, he served as the graduate program coordinator. He holds a master's degree from IUAV University in Venice, Italy, and a PhD in architecture from Griffith University in Brisbane, Australia. He held visiting academic positions at Queensland and Griffith Universities, as well as the Canadian University of Dubai in the UAE. He has about 30 years of experience of practice in Italy, UAE, and Qatar, including managing design concepts, documentation, construction. He's been engaged as a principal investigator in research projects funded by QNRF and Qatar University with a focus on urban sociology, urban regeneration, sustainable urbanization, and vernacular architecture. So I will, in a moment, hand over to Dr. Furlan to introduce the engineers, Heba and Sarah. Before that, I'd like to remind all attendees to keep their microphones on mute throughout the presentation, but please put your comments and questions in the chat box. Let's hand over to you, Dr. Furlan.
Thank you, Professor Mohammed. Thank you very much, and thank you, Omema, for organizing the event and for the involvement as well. It is really my honor and pleasure to be here and to have this discussion with two of our former student, now architect. Actually, I had the honor and the pleasure to be their instructor for for a couple of courses, I think. So Hiba Elgahani is an architect, a urban planner, an observer of the city, and a lover of its transformation. She's aiming to curate a career that is a marriage of research and practice. She holds a bachelor degree in architecture from Qatar University and a master's degree in the urban planning design from Qatar University as well. She's currently an architect in Imar Trading and Contracting, a leading interior architecture contracting company in Doha. She's focusing on technical details of construction and coordination of project interfaces. Prior to that, she held the position of the team lead of design and build landscape project of the Emiri Palace of Lusail, and was also involved in the PWA's Road Beautification Committee in a major public realm and the road landscape project. She is interested in the urban transformation of Doha and closely observing the physical and non-physical transformation of the city as FIFA 2022 World Cup approaches. Also, Hiba was a GA, a graduate assistant within our department. She has been, she worked with us for a year, a couple of years, if I recall well. So she has some experience in the, well, in education. Sara Al-Sada is an architect, currently working for the Medical Facility Engineering and Biomedical Directorate. She graduated in 2017. She got a bachelor degree in architecture from our department. She's one of the founding members and former vice president of the Qatar University chapter of the American Institute of Architecture student, and an active member of the Architectural Association School of Architecture, AA, in London, UK. She completed her internship as Zara did architect in London, UK, and formerly worked at different government and public sector organizations before joining PHCC as an architect and project manager. As I said, it is really an honor and a pleasure because these are two among the most brilliant students we had. And I think that we had really many that graduated from our department. And it is a pleasure to have this discussion with them because it is great for us to hear from their experience. So my first question is quite broad, and he recalled to the title of our sort of seminar. So studying architecture. So this question is to both of you, Hiba and Sara. Why studying architecture? Why did you decide to study architecture? Why, I mean, how do you advise, what is the reason behind studying architecture as well? When I started my bachelor degree program, I mean, many years ago, I was asked the same question and I answered the professor because I want to change the world or I want to change the built environment. And this professor told me, let's start with some sketches and see how far we can go with that. Anyway, it's an open question to each of you.
Hello, everyone. This is Heba speaking. Thank you very much, Dr. Raffaello and Dr. Muhammad for the introduction. And I'm very happy to be here. It's my pleasure to talk today about my experience. I hope that I can answer some of your questions. I hope that I can engage in this discussion and hopefully have a very fruitful and a very productive time. Yeah. So Dr. Raffaello is asking why study architecture. It's a very broad question. I mean, some of us could also ask, why shouldn't we study architecture? Honestly, my experience and my background, so I went into the School of Architecture in Qatar University in the Department of Architecture. I was admitted in 2011. So it's almost been 10 years since I first stepped foot in the Department of Architecture and started having the studio experience and started having a lot of questions of what is this major and what am I going to be and what am I going to do with this after I graduate? And I actually I'm very grateful and I'm very happy that the decision that I took 10 years ago is still the decision I would make today. And it's also something that is extremely attached to my life, to my lifestyle, to my life decisions, and to what I aspire to do and what I aspire to be. I don't know if, of course, this is going to be a casual conversation between all of us, but I just go ahead and have give a brief answer to this question. I think architecture, in the nature of architecture, is an extremely exquisite and unique field. It has to do with art, it has to do with design, it has to do with a lot of technicalities, it has to do with a lot of management. So it basically teaches us and teaches you a great deal of skills. It's a 5-year of continuous learning. I mean, this was such a great experience of my life because every single course and every single year I was learning something new. Now, whether it be something related to design itself or some other skills related to analysis, related to research, related to problem solving, or even things that would talk more about concepts and philosophies and history and theories. So it actually was quite a broad experience about learning so many things and getting to experience so many skills and trying to explore what you actually want to do and what you actually want to pursue further on in life. So first of all, of course, go ahead and study architecture if you're interested in architecture. But also, a lot of people just go ahead and do architecture thinking that it's just going to have to be, you know, making some buildings or making some designs. Actually, it's not only that, it's a lot of other skills. They're interlaced skills, they're overlaying skills. We learned a lot. And with this great deal of skills that we learn, I think we graduated, and when I'm speaking, I'm not just speaking for myself. I know for a fact that I'm speaking for a lot of other colleagues with me. We graduate having this great deal of skills, ready to explore what the world, you know, actually the field of practice has to provide for us. And this opens a lot of opportunities to us. We can actually be entrepreneurs because we learn a lot about entrepreneurship. We can do things like research. We can do things like project planning and event organization. We can, of course, do design. That's what we hope to master. We do a lot of things like management. We do a lot of things like criticism, and a lot of architects actually become diplomats and become civil activists and people who are very interested in the city and the people of the city and how the society is run and what the society is aspiring to be. So I honestly think architecture is an extremely attractive profession because it can cater to each individual and what they actually like, what they want to be. So it then falls into their personality and it enhances it, and vice versa. And then that way it becomes a very unique experience for a person to pursue it as a profession. What do you think, Sarah?
Sarah. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Sarah.
Thank you for hosting us today. And thank you, everyone, for organizing this great event. So yeah, actually, I totally agree with most of what Hiba has just said. And I would add that studying architecture is more about solving problems. You know, you have so many kinds of problems that you could solve during studying architecture related to the built environment around you, related to how you can deal with different problems that people are facing in their daily base, that is related, that let's say most of them are related to the built environment around them. How can you actually enhance their lifestyle? How can you enhance the society they are living in? How can you solve their communication problems with each other? enhance their public life. Actually, I am more into enhancing the public life, the connection, the connection, the public connections between people they used to have before, and now we are losing, unfortunately, nowadays. So it's more of bringing the society and the community again together rather than just building or constructing buildings.
I totally agree with this point. It's not just construction of buildings. It's a lot to do with actually shaping the environment. This is very evident. I mean, in countries that are less privileged, let's say, the built environment that is, we can call poor, they don't have enough infrastructure, they don't have adequate infrastructure, if we could say. Their lifestyle, their aspirations are very different from other countries that are more advanced in their built environment itself. So I totally agree, Sarah.
Exactly. And their view sometimes is very limited as well. You can notice that also. And architecture also is bringing us to another domain nowadays. Now we are using, very advanced technologies, taking architecture into a totally new paradigm through these technologies. And so we are using like also other domains, let's say, including enhancing other domains and encouraging them to enhance the architectural world as well. So it's a cooperation of different fields together.
Exactly. You know what's nice and what's funny is that I sit with artists and I feel that I can relate to them. I sit with engineers and I feel that I can relate to them. I sit with psychologists who talk about mental health and well-being, and I feel that I can relate to them. I can have extremely constructive conversations with them. I sit with pilots. I sit with travelers who enjoy different cities and different cultures. I sit with people who are historians. I totally agree. I think it's a mix of a lot of fields, and especially nowadays it's the world of interdisciplinary, and there's no more just one field alone. I think architecture is a very special case that we can examine into this interdisciplinary field thing.
Yes, I agree. Architects have this power to change the built environment, to change the city, to change the world in a way, which is, to change the built environment, which is going to change our life, our perception of the space that we live in, and our way of life as well. So it is a multifaceted discipline, and that's the beauty. That's the beauty of architecture. It's not just about technicality. It is really about sociology, psychology, and then engineering, of course, and many other disciplines. So that's probably the beauty of our job. This takes me actually to my second sort of questions. I'd like to ask you. I mean, there is a transition. There is definitely a transition between, between schooling, education, and then the practice. I mean, at least for me, I remember when I completed my studies, I had some expectations, and then what I found out in the practice was not really what I expected. And there was a bit of difficulties as well. There were gaps. So as per your experience, I mean, you have experience in the consultancy, you have experience now as in the contracting as well. So what are the challenges that you faced after you completed your study and in this transition when you started your career in the practice? Iba or Sarah?
This is, I mean, I'm still experiencing this. I am still in this phase. I graduated in 2016, and I went ahead directly to do my master's degree, which took me a couple of years to finish. So I graduated my master's degree in 2018. After that, I joined a construction, a contracting and a construction company in the landscape. A year later, I joined my current employer, which is a construction and a contracting company for interior architecture. I'm saying this context or background information to highlight this very important point. The first challenge is, what do I want to do? Really, what do I want to do? Because we graduate with a lot of ideas and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy, but we don't actually know what an architect really does in a company. Like, what do we do? First of all, I just want to highlight that we did take the 2 summer trainings in the last 2 years prior to graduation, but that doesn't, yes, of course, it was a tool for us to meet people, to know consultant offices, contracting offices, but it was a little bit limited in terms of what we got to experience. We were often looked at as students, after all, because we still hadn't graduated yet. But it's very different when you're actually looking for a job, and when you're hearing all of these names, like a consultant office versus a construction office versus a management company. So you don't know what you want to do. That's the first thing. And it could take quite a while. I mean, it took me a couple of years, and I think it still is ongoing, to figure out what path that I really want. Do I want to become into the management field? So I want to become a project manager. Do I want to do more of design and become a designer and have to do with interior, or does it have to be with exterior? Do I want to become into the urban field? So all of these questions actually, I think, is one of the biggest challenges when we graduated. Do you agree, Sarah?
Actually, for me, the case was totally different, because directly after graduation, I started with the practice. And for me, the goal is very clear. I know what I want. But of course, any goal you have, if you want to achieve it, you have to set up a very clear and reasonable plan to achieve it. So my goal is to start my own practice. But in order to achieve that goal, of course, I have to start step by step, start with experiencing the practice, the problems we have in real life, also practicing the project management, the problems we can face with the team, real construction obstacles we may face. And then you can gradually, climb the stair step by step. So for me, the goal was very clear, but the other challenges I was facing is that I'm noticing that there is a great gap between the academia and the practice, and it's a two-way communication problem. It's not only the problem of the academia, where we can solve the problem with the students and academic life. I think there is also a serious problem in the practice. What I'm facing now is that there is no space for experiencing new things, trying different solutions in the practical fields, and this needs to be solved. On the other hand, the technical and the practical experience of the student when she's graduating, from our university, is zero. So of course, on the other side, we need to fill this gap as well. So it's a two-way communication. It's a two-way problem. So maybe we can try, I'm not sure what the solution is, but maybe we can try different methodologies to fill the gap between the academia and the practice. In a way, as what you said, Hiba, you were asking yourself, so if we had enough practical experience before graduating, will this still be your question?
probably it was going to be minimized. I think it's a very good point, because we graduate with, like you said, we were in design studios, we were working in concepts and in design, but we were not dealing with real life problems. We did not know what a project budget had of an effect on the project itself. Technical detailing, for example, like a lot of technical aspects. And this is, I think it's natural. We don't expect students to know everything, but it was kind of a shock. You're absolutely right. It was different. We were more dreamers while we were studying and doing architecture in school. But then facing the real world, I mean, I remember very well one of the first interviews I had when I was looking for a job. The person who was interviewing me did not even look at my portfolio, and he was actually starting to ask me technical questions like technical detailing of a window, what are the types of block work, very technical questions that I was not even able to answer. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because that is not what I thought of architecture, Like I wanted him to talk to me about space. I wanted him to talk to me about how to create a volume, how to create a form. But then in most, if not all, architecture firms, you have to do a lot of technical work. You have to do a lot of problem solving. You have to solve things like HVAC. You have to solve things like problems in the budget. You have to look about the structure. So all of these things, there definitely, I do think that there is a gap. But I mean, I don't know. I think we can still talk a little more about this to see what can be done about it.
You have to produce here in our country. You have to produce as fast as you can. There is no time for
absolutely.
discovering or challenging, let's say, new solutions.
Yes, I also agree to this. There is some limit to how innovative and how visionary you want to be, and how many solutions or concept alternatives you want to come with. No, you have a time frame, you have a limit, you have to meet the project criteria. So all of these things, I do believe were, the shock factor when we graduated.
Exactly. We don't have this kind of experimental design approach in our practice. Like we don't share knowledge between students and the practice. Like for example, when I was doing my internship in Zaha Hadid, many of the staff there actually were students. They were experimenting in the lab in the university and then applying their solutions and their design. Yes, this is amazing. Because students have their own time, they want to prove themselves, they have the energy, the potential to try to lead the new paradigm. And at the same time, the practice itself, the staff of the practice itself, they are busy, let's say, with other projects, other major stuff. So this connection between practice and academia, in that way, will create a tremendous change, I think, if we can apply it here.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
I agree. Hiba, you use a term that is, you use the term dreamer. Well, I tend to think that, I think that dreamer is a synonymous of designer, and designer is a synonymous of exploring or experimenting as a So I also think, I agree with you. I think that the practice, the word of the practice is extremely practical, is extremely technical, and I mean, which is the way it has to be most likely. But at the same time, I think that in the practice, we tend to forget about the dream, about the design. We tend to focus a lot on technology, for example. We think, or practitioners think that through technology we can fix more or less all problems, but in reality I don't think that's the real way. I think that big big names, big architects understood very well that the way to fix the problem, the issue, is first via design and then via technology. I mean, at least this is my personal view. Probably, I mean, technicality is important, there is no doubt, and we try to teach as much technicality on bracket as much as we can. But then the purpose is, I think that the final purpose is to design. So this takes me to our third question, which is we want to know, we would like to know from you how we academics can facilitate this transition. What are the gaps? What is that we can do better, or what is that we don't do right? I don't know. So as per your experience, so you have, I mean, you have a few years experience now in the practice, you face some challenges, you have matured, so in the practice a little bit. So what is your view? How can we do it better? We academics, I mean. Tough question, huh?
Because it's you who's asking.
I mean, you partially answered the question with your challenges. I mean, when you highlighted your challenges.
Yeah. Dr. Raffaello, you were the one who taught us comprehensive design studio. And this design studio happens, I think, in the last year, in the fifth and the last year of architecture.
Yes.
I think that was almost exclusively the only course in which we had regular visits from jurors who were actual architects and practitioners in firms. And it was almost exclusively the only course where we were looking at extremely technical things, integration of systems, the structure, the drainage, the HVAC, all of these things. This is, I think, one of the biggest, let's say, shortcomings, I would call it, from I think, my architectural school experience. There was limited interface with the actual world. We did 2 summer trainings in the last 2 years, but as I said a little earlier, we were often looked at as only students, and being there for only 6 or 8 weeks, that did not actually give us enough time to, of course, this is different from case to case, but it was not enough time for us to have this full-on real-life experience. So I would definitely add a lot more of these external jurors' visits and real-life comments coming in for, into your studios and into your projects, actually. I think most of my friends from my batch would definitely agree to this.
Yes, valid point. Okay, before Sarah, I agree with you. One of my argument in the past, and my suggestion as well, was that the internship should not actually occur in summertime. This to me does not make much sense, and it should not last for 8 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is. So, yeah. For example, I was in Australia for a few years, and I was involved in a university there, and the student in Australia spent 1 year in the practice, exactly 12 months in an office. So this counts as credit hours, so it counts as a year at university, but in reality, this year is spent in a practice, in one or a couple of practices. Yes, I agree with you. This is the way we should do it. I totally agree with you.
I think one of my friends, I'm not sure if it was from my batch or the batch younger than me, I remember we were only in our second year, a little early on, like second or third year. And then she was telling me that she was going for a summer training internship. And I was shocked. I said, wow, why? Like, this is too early. We only do the summer training in the last 2 years. And then she was like, no, I think I want to do this. And I think it's very important for me to, get a real life experience. I mean, of course, this is personal preference. She she prefers to spend her summer vacation in office, but I definitely think that this experience played a big role in realizing what architecture is really and how architects actually deal in real life and in real projects.
Yes, I agree. Sarah.
Yes, in the UK, they also have it as 2 years. It's the part two of their degree.
Wow, it's a long time. 2 years.
Yes, yes, it is the second part of their degree. So yeah, definitely we should have more. And I totally agree with Hiba that um, the comprehensive design studio was one of the best courses we had. And I'm still proud of the outcome of that studio.
Yeah, I remember.
I still remember your project. So, so it is.
I think, I mean, I do think, because Dr. Rafael, as you mentioned a little earlier, I was the graduate assistant for a couple of years with you in the department. Things have definitely changed. I was invited to a few jury sessions for students in their first year, actually, second year. And there were a lot of people from the practice. So I was really happy to see younger batches and younger people having this kind of interaction very early on in their architecture education.
Yes, one of our objective is really to consolidate the link with our graduated architects, so or former students. I mean, we want to hear from you. We want to know how to improve our pedagogical approach as well. We want to learn from your experience, and of course, we want to have you in the juries to advise our students as well. I think it's important to maintain this link. I think this is actually one of our priorities. So we will invite you. We will invite you in the future more often. This is
Hopefully.
our pleasure, really. So
I think if I could add, there is definitely another challenge. I think it will be the technological side. Everyone obviously knows that everything is turning into technology and data analysis and data visualization. In architecture, we did learn a lot of softwares to present our drawings, to visualize our ideas and our dreams. But I do think that there is definitely a lot of potential in terms of parametric design software or simulation softwares. Like, I think this is not only a lack in the School of Architecture, but it's also in the field. However, there is a great need in the field. So we find a lot of people in the practice wanting to do a lot of simulations to see if things are going to work, if things are going to not work, like optimization of material, how it's going to do in the summertime, for example, or even extraordinary designs for like some facades or things like that. I think there definitely needs to be an emphasis on that, especially on the coming years. I know Sarah works with Rhino, right?
And yes, Rhino and Grasshopper. Yeah, and actually the Comprehensive Design Studio was the first project where I worked with the Grasshopper to, I used it for the simulation of the south-oriented facade of my building. So to find the optimal solution of distributing the panels through my facade in order to cover most of the area in the south-oriented space, and then having them as a solar panels. This was my first try. Of course, it was a very basic one, and then I tried it for so many projects. I think it's a great tool. But sometimes you have to be careful because people are fascinated with this kind of technologies, but you always have to remember that this tool is here to help you, not to be guided. Exactly, not to be guided by the tool.
Yes.
Sometimes this happens, with technology.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there are a lot of challenges, things like climate change, things like sustainable materials, and these are definitely important. And I think the world is concentrating on that these days. So I think we definitely need to have these softwares as weapons, and like we have to be equipped to know how to provide designs that actually work, designs that are environmentally friendly, designs that are that do not consume as much energy, things like that. These are the trends. And I do think that we definitely need to equip ourselves with such software.
Yes, I have told Dr. Rafaela the same actually. And for me, it was a self-learning process, a pure self-learning process. And I also have introduced Dr. Rafaela. If you remember Dr. Rafaela, Giancarlo.
Yes, yes.
He's a great guy,
yes,
a great computational designer.
Yep.
He can help.
Yes, I'm glad that you mentioned this because I probably anticipated you that we submitted actually a proposal for a master degree in architecture, focusing on BIM, focusing on sustainable architecture, and focusing on urban design as well. So we are trying. We are quite sensitive to this sort of gap. It would be difficult probably to cover this along the undergraduate studies, and that's why we try to develop a master program focusing on, as I said, the sustainable architecture and BIM. Hopefully, it will be soon approved, and it should be launched next year, actually in fall next year. We'll see how things go, and we hope to have many architects who graduated from our school to come back. So this is.
I think I could be enrolled in that, definitely. Yeah, I mean, the world is heading towards robotics for construction, and these past couple of years only, they proved that sometimes things can happen, and we can only communicate through software. Everyone in their own room communicating through a software. So I think definitely architecture is a field that can utilize this revolution, definitely more than many other fields.
Yes. Thank you, Iba, and thank you, Sarah. And I think that the audience might have a few questions. So, Professor Mohammed, if there is any, I don't know if there is any question that we.
Well, actually, I'd like to probably refer back to Leah, Mariam, if you want to. I know you asked a question a while ago, but if you don't mind, if you can unmute yourself and ask a question. I have a question as well, actually, for the three of you, but let's wait for Leah Mariam if she wants to ask the question. I think the question was for Hiba, I think. Well, that's okay. I mean, I'll ask my question. You mentioned Dreamer as the probably maybe the only non-architecture major here. My field is mostly literature and comparative literature, so I like the word dreamer. So I'll kind of ask you a question that maybe I want to link a dream to the technical or practical work of architects. You'd mentioned, I think it was Sarah who had mentioned that society has changed a lot in Qatar, and I studied my undergrad in Qatar a long time ago. And so when I go back, I went back 2004, 2015, I think, and 16, 17, to meet my Qatari friends. They all talk about how society has changed and things have changed. So how do you design either a public space or a private space for these three questions? So how do you design a space to encourage the kind of relationships that you're saying that we miss now, that they used to be there? And the second question is has to do with influence. So if you work in a company or you have your own clients, how do you influence the design process, the decision making, in order to accept your own ideas for designing spaces that would get people together. And I guess the last question would be for you, Dr. Raffaello, is that since you're proposing master's degrees in urban design and sustainability, I wonder whether there could be courses or even a program that's focused on let's say Qatari or just generally Gulf social ways of interaction and community relationships, and how these can be revived through design in a course, like an innovative course. So I'll let anyone jump in, but it's really interesting that the discussion went from the dreams to the technical side. And I'm trying to kind of say, okay, why don't we just connect them and see how they could be connected?
Yes. Okay, I'll start with the last question. So, and then Iba and Sarah can continue. I think that the master program, okay, the master in architecture and urban design can be launched everywhere, and there are many other programs similar to this one, probably in many other places. But we are trying to give emphasis to the place. That is true. So how do we design a space which is suitable to Doha or Qatar? So I think that there are considerations that needs to be made. So the first one is socio-cultural values. The second one could be climate as well. So there are a few factors that we need to address. So this means that all the courses taught along the master program should be tailored to this society, to this the built environment of this society, which is a mirror of the society way of life as well. So this is the way, in my view, this is the way to create spaces which are livable for a specific society. I am Italian. I lived in Australia for several years as well. Of course, the way we would design a thing of an open space in Italy or even of a satellite city in Italy or in Australia or in a Western place is very much different from the way we should think of here in Qatar or in the GCC. So we need to address those socio-cultural factors and values, and the climate. The climate is also a factor that we need to address. Did I answer your question? Or?
Yes, of course, yes. Yeah, it's interesting, yes, that you can actually, yes, all the courses can actually be tailored with those values. And I think it was Heba who talked about working in a company and figuring out your place within that company as an architect, and that may be related to Leah Mariam's question. So how do you start to influence the decision making in a company in order to help or move the design process in a way that reflects those values or mirror those values? And I'm going to ask the same question for Sarah, because you were saying that you wanted to start your own practice, which means you're going to be working with individual clients. How do you start to influence them for their own individual needs? And so we've got a company and I guess the company for Hiba, more like organizational influence, and over here is more like person one-to-one influence.
I think this is a very tough question. It's very hard. It's naturally very hard for someone who's just starting off their career to start influencing decision making in a company, or even within the set of stakeholders in the country or whatever. But I do think, and I really do believe, and since we started off this talk about dreaming, is if you actually have a dream, and if you believe in your abilities as an architect, and if you believe in your in the values that you're trying to spread, it only takes a little bit of hard work to get there and actually start influencing. I think one of the very important keywords here is persistence. If you're in a new company or in a new community, or even in a small group of people, if you believe in something and you want to start defending this, what you believe in, or if you want to start persuading people into what you believe in, if you want to influence and impact the decisions that are being made, you should only be persistent in showing your ideas, into defending them, having ways into connecting them to what they're actually doing. I think it does take a lot of persistence to do that. But this was actually one of the very interesting challenges, because you graduate and you think you would get into this company and become a very effective role. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as that. Especially if you join a company of 500 people, say, what are the chances of you influencing 500 others? They're minimal. They're not impossible, but they're minimal. So it's very important for young architects and architects graduates to be persistent, to work hard, and to also, keep believing in what they actually believe in. And if they want to make a change, I truly believe that they can make a change.
Sorry, Dr. Mohammed, we cannot hear you.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. So Sarah, what about you? And then we're going to go to Leah's question. So how do you, I know you haven't started yet your own private practice, but how do you kind of imagine this meeting with let's say a family that want to design their home in a particular way, and you realize that this is not going to encourage the kind of social interaction that you're interested in? How would you start to persuade them to go the other way?
Okay, for me, I think dealing with a single family is as much as hard of like dealing with the whole city, because the city is a projective, it's a projective collection, let's say, of the cultural, economic, political aspects of the social context we have. So a single family is a presentation of the whole society you are living in. So once you understand the society you are dealing with, or the society you are living in, you can understand, let's say, predict the goals that this family are aiming for, or what they are looking for in their future house. So you have to build yourself step by step, get more into the society, more into the context, the social context you are living in, and then you will easily understand the family or the urban project, or what is it.
Okay, well that's really interesting, because there is I mean, I think I mentioned, so I actually studied in Qatar University a long time ago, and it's interesting how, even though I also came from a similar culture, but coming into Qatar in the late 80s and early 90s, I actually found that there was more social support. I don't know what I'm trying to translate some words from Arabic, but kind of generosity mixed with a kind of kindness, and that's kind of interesting. For me, it's when I went back to the Gulf again, 2016, 17, I found it again, and it is quite apparent. But as you were saying earlier, at the beginning of the talk, that it's kind of we're beginning to lose that a bit. So I have Leah's question. So she was asking, I think, Hiba, that of the different roles that you had, or you had opportunities in companies, which one was the most challenging? So you mentioned project manager and so on, and I think the question should also be addressed to Sarah as well. Which role is the most challenging?
I think this is definitely a personal experience, and my experience shouldn't necessarily be the same for her or for anyone else. I have worked as an architect for a small firm, and I was dealing with designs one-on-one with private clients. I was designing their homes, their places of residence. Then I was working for a company that has to do with landscape, but this time it was not design, it was construction. So I was basically in the contracting world. After that, I jumped again into the contracting world, but into interior architecture. I think each and every single one of them has its challenges, but I would have to say that the contracting world, where you are basically in charge of creating the documents that are going to be built. So I'm talking about shop drawings or construction drawings. These are a very critical. They're a very critical document. You have to pay each single detail a lot of focus, and I'm speaking of each millimeter even. So I think this is one of the most challenging ones, because you have to have a lot of patience, and you have to have a lot of in Arabic we call it sabr. So basically you have to be patient to get these drawings out, and you have to also be very responsible and very wise because we often work in teams. So you have to be very responsible and also wise in managing the team, or playing as one of the team members. If something goes wrong, or if there is an emergency, or if some team member needs support from you. So all of these things. But again, it has to do with the technical documents of construction. These are very interesting. I become very detailed in my drawings. However, they're very challenging. I don't know if that answers your question, Leah, but yeah.
Yes,
you're welcome.
Yes, yeah. So what about you, Sarah, in terms of what you found as the most challenging role?
Yeah, I totally agree with Hiba. I totally agree. Dealing with, for me, as a project manager, dealing with contractors is the worst part of my work.
So dealing with us is the worst part.
Yes, exactly. Because their excuses are always ready.
But they're real.
Well, it's interesting that you added the word sabr, because sabr is a kind of patience. You also mentioned wisdom, but it's a kind of it suggests dealing with difficulty with a lot of wisdom. So yeah, that's kind of a nice expression.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, imagine having to work on a small detail for 5 hours. I mean, people would not believe that you spent 5 hours drawing this 1 meter by 1 meter only, but it actually takes that long.
Okay.
You have to squeeze them all the time.
Oh, I see. Yes, that's true. That's true.
Contract.
Yes. Okay, so if there's any more questions, let's say one more or thought. Okay, so what I'll do is, it is actually almost time. I want to say final thoughts to the three of you on the topic, especially of the idea of systems thinking, of integrating, but with a direction. Since we're saying earlier that we need to mirror the values of the society we're in. So how does systems thinking, what does that phrase suggest to you in terms of thinking of architecture?
This is an open question for the three of us.
Yes, actually starting with you.
Okay, so to me, when we talk about system, we talk about technology, we talk about this multifaceted aspect of architecture, but in the end, there is a soul. There is one element, which is the design. So basically, to me, architecture is design. So then within this design, there is technology, there are the systems, but it is not the system or the technology leading. It is not the computer, the software leading. All of these systems, all of these tools can help us, But in the end, it is the mind of the architect that generate the building, the form, that change the built environment as well. So I think that this is what education should be. I mean, as Iba and Sarah emphasized at the beginning, that the industry give a lot of emphasis to practicality, technicality. Well, all of this is important. There is no doubt. So we cannot forget this. But again, we need to keep being a dreamer, keep being a designer as well. And I know this is extremely difficult. And those that keep on being designers and dreamers are those that become big names, big architects. But at least this is my view of the architectural world.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Any more final comments before we close?
I totally agree. I think architecture is all about systems. It's the structural system, it's the living system, it's the drainage, it's the energy, it's the electrical system. It's the built environment itself is a system within the system of the city. So grasping all of these together and trying to create your own system within that, to project your own dreams and to have your own approach, I think it's very important and what we greatly need. I remember very well one of my instructors back in school, he told me, don't be just a drawing machine. He actually told me that. Do not be the person who's just drawing the toilet seat in the bathroom. I actually am very grateful for this advice that he gave, because we don't want to end up just people who are drawing. We want to be the people who think about this architectural system within the system of the city, within the system of the country, and it goes on. I mean, it can sound complicated, but I think it's very simple. Each of us has their own system of doing things, and I think you should just project it into the system of architecture.
Yeah, that's quite nice, where you put them systems within each other, and even with a country, then we can say something like, within the system of values that the country espouses. Any final word, Sarah?
Yes, I totally agree with Dr. Raffaello. It's not about the system, it's always about the architect, and the system will always help you to implement your idea, but you are the designer. Actually, to be a dreamer is a gift for me, I think. This is what distinguish designer from others, or architect from others.
Yes, I agree, from other professions, yes.
Yeah, so basically behind all of these designs, systems, there's actually the person. Well, thank you very much for this great talk. It's exactly my time here in Toronto is 1:03 p.m., which is probably 8 over there. Okay, so I'll hand over to Celine, and thank you very much. This is very enriching and very exciting.
Thank you much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you everyone who was with us in this talk. It was very informative and rich of thoughts. Thanks Dr. Mohammed, Dr. Raffaello. Thanks architect Hiba and architect Sarah. Be with us, we have many sessions soon. Thanks everyone, and stay safe. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Thanks for sharing this.
Thank you.